Cop mocks mother holding her baby as she tries to report domestic abuse by her drunk husband. Gabriella walked into the precinct slowly, baby Grant in her arms, her face burning as she tried to hide the tremor in her hands. Her presence made the desk officer, Jonathan, lift his eyes from his phone with a bored look. "Go ahead." "What happened?" Jonathan asked, disinterested, propping his elbow on the counter without taking his eyes off the screen. "My husband came home drunk, started yelling, shoved me, slammed me against the wall, hurt my arm and scared my baby," Gabriella said, voice tight, holding Grant close. "Your husband's name?" Jonathan asked without even lifting his pen, tapping his notebook as if he had all the time in the world. "His name is William," Gabriella said, meeting his eyes despite the fear. "What does he look like?" Jonathan asked with a flicker of curiosity, brows pulling together as if searching his memory. Gabriella described William in detail, and as she spoke she could see Jonathan's expression shift. "Ah, I know him. He's a good guy. Wouldn't do that. Domestic spats get handled at home, not with the police," Jonathan said with a faint smile, his tone making it clear he wasn't taking her seriously. "So you're looking right at my bruised arm, and you're still going to ignore this?" Gabriella asked, holding back anger. "I just don't want to waste my time with drama and a lover's quarrel," Jonathan said, snapping the notebook shut and leaning against the door as if to block the way. "This isn't a lover's quarrel. It's violence, and I want to file a report," Gabriella said quickly, shifting Grant in her arms to keep him from crying. "Careful what you push for. I can say that child is at risk and have him taken into custody if you keep making things up," Jonathan said coldly, lifting his chin like a threat. "Making things up? I just want you to record what happened," Gabriella said, voice shaking as she set her hand on the counter. "Enough. This isn't a place for lies or theatrics," Jonathan said, grabbing Gabriella by the wrist. "You're hurting me," she said, voice breaking. "Leave before this gets worse for you," Jonathan said flatly, releasing her wrist and pointing to the door. Grant's cry echoed through the lobby. Gabriella stepped back, bit her lip, and left with her son pressed to her chest, heading somewhere she could get her arm looked at. A few minutes later, Gabriella reached the clinic. Emily, a nurse there, and someone Gabriella knew, met her with alert eyes, pulled her chart, and led her to a gurney. Abrasion on the shoulder, redness on the forearm. Baby shows no apparent signs of trauma, Emily said firmly as she examined her. "Now tell me, what happened to you?" Emily asked, looking up. Gabriella told her everything in detail, what her husband had done and what the officer at the precinct had said. "The officer did that?" Emily asked, surprised, stopping mid-note to look straight at Gabriella. "He did. He laughed when he heard my husband's name," Gabriella answered, voice trembling as anger slipped through. Emily was about to respond when a cell phone started ringing, cutting through the room's quiet. Gabriella glanced at the screen, saw William, and her eyes flew open in shock. Holding her breath, she answered and put it on speaker. "Get home now, you ungrateful woman, before I come drag you back. You know who I run with," William said, his voice slow with booze and heavy with threat. He hung up before Gabriella could respond. The silence that followed felt weighty, and Gabriella stood frozen, the words still echoing while Emily squinted in concern. "That man is dangerous. You need to be careful. For now, I'm going to document everything I heard, so no one can claim you made it up," Emily said with resolve, grabbing the chart and starting to fill out the form as she spoke. "Thank you. I'm going to keep this safe," Gabriella said, taking the document with both hands, feeling the weight of the paper. The next day, Gabriella sat at the table, took a deep breath, and decided to go through William's phone, looking for any proof of what he'd been up to before the assault. As she scrolled through the messages, she noticed an exchange between William and Officer Jonathan, the same man who had humiliated her at the precinct. The lines were short, full of code and implication, Seize without paperwork. Make the report disappear. Fix it. Gabriella's stomach clenched. She took screenshots one by one and sent them to her own number without saying a word. They know each other, and they're in something together. That's why he treated me like that at the station, Gabriella whispered, her anger cold, heart racing. With the screenshots saved on her phone, Gabriella went to a copy shop to print the files when a shadow stopped behind her. "Did you think I wouldn't notice you snooping through my phone without my permission?" William said, suddenly at her back, his voice loud and sharp. "How did you find me here?" Gabriella asked, startled, clutching her purse to her body. "I saw you through the window. You think I'm stupid?" William said, anger tight in his voice, stepping in close enough to steal the air from the space. "Back up. You're scaring me," Gabriella said, voice shaking, edging half a step toward the printer. "Give me that," William said, yanking the page as it came out of the printer, ripping it in front of her, and then gripping her arm hard. "Don't touch me," Gabriella said, breathless. "Who's going to stop me? You!" William sneered, letting go of her arm and backing toward the door. Gabriella stood still for a few seconds, feeling her heart pound, then left the copy shop, certain the screenshots were still safe on her phone. The following week, Gabriella went to a different precinct, ready to tell it all again. There, she walked up to the counter and laid everything out. Talked about her husband, the officer who handled her case, and showed the messages she'd found on the phone. "Please hold a moment, I'm going to document everything," the front desk clerk said in a neutral tone, taking the papers as a uniformed man walked slowly down the hallway. Gabriella followed him with her eyes and read his badge, Commander Adrian. He stopped at a side door, answered his phone, and stepped into the office without fully closing it. "Yes, nephew, I saw what you did. Keep quiet, I'll handle it," Adrian said into the phone, his voice firm and clear enough to slip through the door crack and make Gabriella's blood run cold. A moment later, the clerk returned, holding the folder and avoiding eye contact. "It'll be better if the commander evaluates your case personally," the clerk said, more subdued now, setting the papers on the counter. "Sorry, but why change now? You said you were going to file it," Gabriella asked, indignation held tight. "Internal guidance. That's what I was told," the clerk said, pushing the folder back. "Please, at least log this. You can deal with the rest after," Gabriella said, voice breaking as she fought to stay composed. "I can't." "The commander has to do it himself," the clerk whispered, flicking her eyes toward the closed door. Gabriella gathered the documents and left in silence, suspecting the call she'd overheard from the commander had everything to do with the clerk's sudden change. Outside, a man in a helmet started up a motorcycle and tailed her, staying just close enough to rattle her. Gabriella noticed, panic rising. She quickened her pace and turned onto the street where her Aunt Jasmine lived. When she got there, she banged on the door, heart hammering. The door opened to Jasmine's worried face. "Gabriella, what happened?" Jasmine asked, startled. "Auntie, a man's following me," Gabriella said, breathless, glancing over her shoulder. "Get in. Don't stand out there," Jasmine said firmly. Inside, Gabriella told her everything that had happened up to that point, and with every word, Jasmine's expression shifted, from shock to indignation to a heavy, worried look. "I just need to stay here a few days until I sort this out. I'll go pick up Grant from the neighbor who's watching him. I promise we won't be any trouble," Gabriella said, relief and embarrassment tangled in her voice. "You can stay as long as you need, sweetheart. You've been through too much. I hope you can breathe a little easier here," Jasmine said softly, resting a hand on Gabriella's shoulder. The next morning, Gabriella was pushing Grant's stroller along the sidewalk on her way to the market when a patrol car stopped at the corner and a car door slammed. Jonathan climbed out with long strides, eyes locked on her. "ID," he said curtly, holding out an open hand toward Gabriella. "Why? What is it now?" Gabriella asked, heart racing, pulling out her wallet slowly, not understanding why she was being stopped. Face the wall, Jonathan said, flipping her bag with his other hand and spilling the contents. There's no need for that. I'm cooperating, Gabriella said, breath tight. I can call it in and have Child Protective Services take your baby into custody if I decide he's in danger with you, Jonathan said, standing too close, his forearm pressing into Gabriella's shoulder, the look in his eyes, a threat dressed up as authority. He's safe with me. There's no reason for that, Gabriella said, trying to keep her voice steady, even as her whole body shook. For now, you're fine. Go, Jonathan said suddenly, shoving her papers back with impatience. Gabriella turned the corner, eased the stroller into some shade, pulled out her phone with trembling hands, and made a call. Emily, I need your help. I'm sending you the screenshots of the messages between William and that officer I told you about, and the audio he sent me that day. Please, save everything, Gabriella said urgently, attaching the files. Send it. I'll keep it safe, don't worry, Emily replied quickly, voice steady. Moving with the same resolve, Gabriella went back to the clinic to request certified copies of the full chart from the day she was seen. When she arrived, she noticed a man with a badge whisper to the administrators and hurry out without introducing himself. Emily came out and took her through the back, explained they'd tried to tone down words like shoved and threatened the baby, and told her she had kept the original text. Then she processed and stamped new certified copies and handed them over in a sealed envelope with a signed receipt. That night was quiet. Gabriella was alone with Grant. Her aunt had stepped out when heavy pounding started echoing down the hallway. The noise woke Grant, and he started crying. Gabriella approached the door slowly and asked who it was, but no one answered. The banging came again, harder this time. Holding her breath, she cracked the door open and recognized William on the other side. "Open up! I'm taking my son!" William shouted. Rage laid bare, face red and breath reeking of alcohol through the security grate. "Leave! You're not getting in here," Gabriella said, firm, locking the deadbolt and bracing the door with her body. "You think you can stop me?" William yelled, pounding the door again with his fist. "If you keep this up, I'll scream, and the whole building will see what you're doing," Gabriella said, voice shaking but set. The pounding stopped for a few seconds. William drew a long breath on the other side, then his footsteps started down the stairs, heavy and hot with anger, until they faded away. Gabriella stayed where she was, her whole body trembling, her heartbeat louder than the silence. Then she bent down, picked Grant up, and rocked him until his crying eased. That night, Gabriella spread everything she had across the table, the stamped record from her first visit, the certified copies of her chart, the screenshots of the messages between William and Jonathan, and the audio of his insults, and spent hours organizing each piece with care. When dawn broke, she took a deep breath, put everything in a folder, and headed to the public defender's office. There, a staffer checked each attachment, listened to Gabriella's timeline, and called internal affairs. In a conference room, they opened a case form, copied the files from her phone, and filed everything under a single case number. The bureaucratic steps were logged without debate and without interruption. A few hours later, the door opened and Emily came in, called to confirm what Gabriella had said. "I documented the marks on Gabriella's body and saw her fear of losing her child." "That's in the chart I wrote," Emily said firmly, standing beside the table. "These messages lay out the scheme," the staffer said, pointing at the screenshots with controlled outrage. "William received money and goods from seizures Jonathan carried out, and in exchange, he got protection and reports erased. I suspected as much when he defended William, and they refused to take my complaint even though I was hurt," Gabriella said, voice steady, fighting tears. "Commander Adrian is Jonathan's uncle and backed the fraud, ordering reports to disappear and intimidating anyone who tried to blow the whistle. The calls between them were easy to confirm using the screenshots you provided, along with documents Adrian himself signed," the Internal Affairs agent said gravely, closing out the memo. The team finished the case file and made the protection request official. Gabriella signed her statement, Emily verified the copies, and the whole packet was sealed and logged. In the days that followed, the quiet settled back in, until a phone call informed Gabriella that her complaint had been accepted and that she and Grant were officially under protection. Internal Affairs also reported the suspension and indictment of Jonathan for collusion, threats, and corruption, of Adrian for influence peddling and abuse of authority, and of William for domestic violence, fraud, and criminal conspiracy, based on the evidence submitted and Emily's testimony. The next day, Gabriella returned to the office to sign the final order. The case number was confirmed, the stamps checked, and the documents returned with no objections. Outside, she met Emily, who hurried over to hear the outcome. Gabriella showed her the final stamp and received a silent hug from her friend. No audience, no noise, just the calm air of the courtyard marked the end of a fight that had felt endless. For the first time in weeks, Gabriella felt that no one would ever again have the power to erase what she had been through. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, give it a like, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you in the next story.